Today's Salt Lake City Council formal meeting. We are continuing to hold our meeting remotely due to the declarations of emergency related to the pandemic and earthquake. While we hold our meetings remotely, we are happy to have you connecting with us online or by phone. Thank you for joining us. We're going to start with the Pledge of Allegiance tonight. We hold a moment of silence as we recite it, and then when we are done, we'll turn our audio back on. Let's go ahead and do that. All right, thank you, everyone. Excuse me. I will cover our public meeting rules before our public comment sections of the agenda, and this brings us to item A4, to approve the work session meeting minutes of Tuesday, December 1st, 2020, as well as the airport bond minutes of Tuesday, January 19th, 2021. I'll look for a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move that we approve the work session meeting minutes of Tuesday, December 1st, 2020, as well as the airport bond minutes of Tuesday, January 19th, 2021.
A second.
We have a motion by Councilmember Dugan, a second by Councilmember Romano, excuse me. Any discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Do individually, excuse me. Sorry.
Aye.
I'll go in order. Councilmember Rogers.
Aye.
Councilmember Valdemoros.
Aye.
Councilmember Romano.
Aye.
Councilmember Dugan.
Aye.
And I'm an aye as well. That's unanimous with council members Fowler and Wharton absent. All right. Let me, excuse me, I got to pull this up a little bit. We are now at the public hearing portion of our agenda for specific items before the council for consideration. As a reminder, we are taking comments in the order. As a reminder, we are taking comments in the order of each scheduled public hearing. General comments will take place after the scheduled hearing items. We are accepting your comments through WebEx, and for those whose only option is to call in, staff will be monitoring a separate telephone line. The City Council has always had rules of decorum that are created to advance the legitimate government objectives of having an orderly, efficient meeting that moves through the agenda and gives everyone the opportunity to voice their opinions. We had these rules of decorum when we were meeting in person, and it is important to continue with the practice. In person, we had the added benefit of being able to see each of the commenters, which helped us to get to know our constituents and engage more meaningfully. As we continue to meet electronically, we still want to provide a space for people to feel comfortable and safe to participate. In order to achieve this, our rules of decorum extend from the moment you arrive into our virtual meeting. To help facilitate our comment period, please be respectful, avoid yelling or making racial slurs, obscene, or defamatory remarks. The council respects all points of view and we welcome new insights. However, using foul language and personal attacks make the public comment forum uncivil and intimidating for others. In addition to being a public forum, this meeting is also being broadcast on television and the internet. Because of that, the council has decided to more strictly enforce the use of profanity. If you feel you need to use profanity to express your point, you're welcome to email council members or call our comment line at 801-535-7654. Based on that, this will be considered your advanced warning against the use of profanity. If someone uses profanity, we will mute your microphone and you will forfeit your opportunity to address the council tonight. Your name in our in-person meetings, please provide a first and last name prior to speaking in the public comment period. To limit disruption, Your first and last name given cannot include a message or violate our rules of decorum. If your registered name doesn't meet this requirement, then our staff will use the chat feature to gather that information from you. If you are unable to give a first and last name that meets this requirement, our staff is happy to direct you to another form because your message is still important to us. Amber Pearson from our staff is helping to moderate the meeting. She will be messaging with the attendees to coordinate. Please monitor the chat screen for information and/or feel free to message our staff with any questions. Again, her name is Amber Pearson. Amber will take your first and last name. If you are unable to give a first and last name that does not include a message or violate our rules of decorum, our staff will direct you to other channels of communication with the council. Robert Nutzman, another staff member, will be calling the names of those who wish to comment and unmuting lines. Once we open public comment, Robert will announce 3 names at a time so that people can have some notice and be prepared to speak. When it is your turn to speak, the meeting host will unmute your line. Please state your name and the 2-minute timer will begin. At the 2-minute mark, the host will announce time and your microphone will be muted. We apologize in advance if this catches you by surprise, but we will be cutting off the microphone at 2 minutes to respect everyone's time tonight. Of course, if you are unable to complete your full comment within the available time, please feel free to mail the Salt Lake City Council at P.O. Box 145476, Salt Lake City, Utah 84114-5476. And we can put that in another form so you can have that written in front of you. Email us at council.comments@slcgov.com or phone us at 801-535-7654. And again, we can post that for folks who want to see that. If you do not wish to speak, please message our staff to let them know, or when the host states your name, please let us know you are here to listen. That was a lot of information, so it's okay if you don't remember all of it, and just ask questions as it comes up in the public comment period. All right, tonight we have 5 public hearings. Our first public hearing is regarding an ordinance regarding an ordinance that would close a small portion of City-owned alley at approximately 740 West and 746 West, 900 South. Now, before we begin taking comments, I will first turn the time over to Brian Fulmer, Council Staff Policy Analyst, to give a short introduction. Brian?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Great, thank you. As you mentioned, it's this public hearing is about a very small segment of a public alley, the area you mentioned. And the proposal is to close the alley so the applicant can square off the southwestern corner of his property for a proposed future multifamily residential and commercial development. I'd like to note this public hearing is only for this small alley segment. There is another public hearing immediately following this one on rezoning the other parcels.
Thanks, Brian. All right, Robert, please start with our first public comment.
Good afternoon, Council Chair, or good evening now, rather. The first person we have to speak today is Ron Tamu, followed by Brenda Shear and then Dennis Ferris. Ron, you are unmuted. Ron Tamu,
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. And so what I want to know is they're closing up there's a little alley back there over by our church. And a lot of times traffic goes through there. So that's going to be open to for people to still travel through.
Yeah, we don't generally do public kind of back and forth question and answer here, but we can have Brian Fulmer answer that question for you offline.
Okay, I'm just concerned that that's going to remain open because people travel through that alley and they still need access to that. I'm just wondering whether or not that's going to be available to people to travel, and we can travel through there when trains are there. That's all.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Tamu. And like I said, we can have council staff answer that question for you here, if you'd like.
Council Chair, next we have Brenda Shear, followed by Dennis Ferris, and then Sarah Lind. Brenda, you are unmuted.
Hi, thank you. My name is Brenda Shear, and I'm Chair of the Salt Lake City Planning Commission, and I'd like to speak in favor of this proposal. It is a very short alley vacation, and it enables what we consider to be a really nice project for this area. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Dennis Ferris. Dennis, you are unmuted.
Hi, this is Dennis Ferris, Vice Chair of the Poplar Grove Community Council, former chair when this project started. Wanted to speak in favor of this project. This alley vacation will allow the developer to actually improve the alley and maintain access through there with multiple improvements to the space. Would be very beneficial to the community. He's been extremely communicative and collaborative with the community for the last 2.5 years since he first put the property under contract, and it's been very appreciated. He's heard a lot of our input and has applied the vast majority of it, much to our joy. That'll do me. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Council Chair, next we have Larry Singh. Give me one moment while I unmute Larry. Larry, you are unmuted.
Okay. Hi. Sorry, I just joined, so I missed the initial context. Is this the alleyway expansion on the southwest corner?
Yeah, this is the closing a portion of the alley at 740 West, 746 West 9 South.
Oh yeah, so I'm in support of that, and just excited to see some renovations of the older warehouses and conversion into some commercial space to revitalize the 9th West, 9th South area that I know the city's really interested in putting a lot of resources into. And I just live on the same block, and it's been great to see the work going on, and just really excited to have some new energy infused into this block, 700 and 800th West block, which is obviously close to the 9th and 9th. So yeah, I'm in support of. That's what I have to say. Thanks.
Hey, thanks for your comments.
Council Chair, next we have Sarah Lind. Sarah, you are unmuted.
Hi, I actually wasn't expecting that, but thank you. I'm calling in to address the concerns over the unsheltered and the moves on the encampments, and I was just wondering how things were going to be addressed and what we're looking at the next few days, but you want to put that at the end of the list.
Yeah, we'll have time for public comment over any issue at the end of the meeting tonight.
Great, thank you.
Council Chair, we have no more speakers for this item.
All right. Thanks everyone who made a comment on this item. I'll look for a motion, Council.
Mr. Chair, I move that the council close the public hearing and defer action to a future council meeting.
Second.
We have a motion from Councilmember Rogers, a second from Councilmember Dugan. Any discussion? If not, all in favor, I'll start with Councilmember Rogers.
Yes.
Councilmember Valdemoros.
Yes.
Councilmember Wharton.
Yes.
Councilmember Mono.
Yes.
Councilmember Dugan.
Yes.
And I am a yes as well. It's unanimous with Councilmember Fowler absent. And that motion passes. Our second public hearing, item B2, is regarding an ordinance that would rezone properties at 706 to 740 West, 900 South, and 710 to 739 West Genesee Avenue, including portions of 2 alleys from M1 Light Manufacturing to RMU Residential Mixed Use. This is the properties that are adjacent to the alley we just discussed. Before we begin taking comments, I will again first turn the time over to Brian Fulmer, Council Staff Policy Analyst, to give a short introduction.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The applicant is hoping to rezone these properties in order to develop the remaining portion of the site with multifamily residential housing that is not currently permitted under the M1 zoning designation, and also intends to commercial buildings on the site for commercial uses. And that is my introduction.
Thank you very much. All right, Robert, please start with our first public comment.
Hey, Council Chair. We first have up Linus Wedge, followed by Carrie Hopkins, and then Mary Lee Sabino. Linus, you're unmuted.
Hello, my name is Linus Wegge. I own the property abutting the north of the property to be rezoned. I just wanted to say that I fully approve of the development, and it'll be nice to see this area get a facelift and join the downtown district. I can't see any bad side to this, but I'd bring to your attention that there are a few problems with the east-west travel through the alley from the middle of that property that goes out to 8th West. So maybe somebody should look into that. That's all I have.
Thanks for your comments. And if you want to follow up on that particular alley, I'm sure council staff can help with that as well.
Thank you.
Next, we have Carrie Hopkins, followed by Mary Lee Sabino, and then Larry Frem. Carrie, you're unmuted now.
Great, thank you. I just wanted to speak in favor of this project. I think it's great to rezone this area and to see kind of a new life in the gateway into the west side on 9th South. I think it fits really well with the West Side Master Plan, and it's just really exciting for the area. So I just wanted to speak in favor of the rezone. Thank you.
Thanks for your comments.
Next, we have Mary Lee Sabino, followed by Larry Frem, and then Ron Tamu. One moment while I unmute Mary Lee. Mary Lee, you're
Good
unmuted.
evening. Oh, thank you. Good evening. This is Mary Lee Sabino. I appreciate the opportunity, and I appreciate the service that the council provides. I know this is a lot of work for you guys. I am in support of this project. I'm excited as well about what is coming for the revitalization for this area. But a really critical, important piece that I want to stress that I'm not sure if the neighbors are aware of, an RMU zoning will allow this building to be as tall virtually as the builders want to make it. An RMU 35 is what most of these buildings are down on 4th South, which happens to be where I live. They're already very large buildings. Anything greater than an RMU 35 is not going to fit with this community. It's not going to fit with the neighborhood. RMU 35 is already what other zoning is in the proximal neighborhood to the single family homes that already exist there. And you really have to think about your home being right next to something that's higher than 35 feet is going to be very much affected by that building. And it's a height that I think is excessive for that community, and it's going to have, in the big picture, potentially a negative impact as opposed to a positive impact. Thank you.
Thanks for your comments.
Next, we have Larry Frame. Larry, you're unmuted.
Hi, yeah, this is Larry Frommy. Yeah, I live kitty cornered on the block to where, this rezone will happen, and I am in support. I'm excited to see some additional residential development in the area, especially to contribute to some of the new commercial businesses that might be coming. And yeah, it's again, it's exciting to see. I appreciated the previous person's comment on the height. I'm not sure what the plans of the height are, but I did notice that, yeah, the RMU maybe apparently does look like it does have unlimited height. So that's just something I would want more information about as the rezoning goes on. But otherwise, yeah, everything sounds great, and I appreciate you guys. Thank you.
Thanks for your comments.
They don't do the research.
One moment, council members. Next, we have Ron Tamu, followed by Bernie Aua, and then Sue Menu. Ron, you are unmuted.
Hi, thank you for allowing us to make comments. I'm a member of Summum, and when our founder Corky Raw was looking for a place to put our church, he was looking for a nice residential area that had a low profile where we'd have plenty access to sun, which is relevant to our religion. And we were informed because when we make our sacrament, it's made with grape juice and fermented, and we were not allowed to make wine, even though we made it with our own hands and we're going to use it for religious purposes only. We were forced to go into the M1 zone, which we didn't want to do, but we had to go here. So that's where we landed. So now that we're here, we use the sun for a lot of our religious practices. And what we're looking at now is when you come out from under the freeway, they want to build a building that is not 65 feet, which is the zoning now, but actually up to 75 feet. It'll tower even over the freeway. So when you come underneath the freeway and you come in, you're going to have this gigantic building there with proposed 244 units. And unfortunately, I'm a funeral director, and I have been in a lot of homes in the low-income place of this town, and they pack people in as much as they can. I take people out from the closets and everywhere else. I know that right now it's going to be nice and pretty, but in about 30, 40 years, when it gets a little run down and you have all these families living in there, and I watch the kids roam around looking for something to do at night when I go into these communities, you're going to have to be dealing with this. Of course, you won't be dealing with it. It'll be your grandchildren will have to deal with the crime and the rape and the drugs and everything else to go with high density. You've got plenty of space out by the airport, which you're planning on putting a high pollution thing. Of course, you don't have anything to say. I guess it's just the donors. I guess you'll cut me off.
You still have time, Mr. Timmons, if you want the rest of your time.
Well, I just think it's just unfair to be corralling our church and bringing all of that sound is going to just destroy our environment around our church. And the community did not involve us.
Well, thanks for your comments again.
Council Chair, next we have Bernie Aua, and then Sue Menu, and followed by Ian Percy. Bernie, you're unmuted.
Council members, my name is Bernie Aowa. I am the Vice President of Summum. Summum is a small religious organization that's located right next to the property being considered for the rezoning. We've been part of the Poplar Grove community for over 40 years. We teach and practice meditations that are conducted inside our buildings and outside on our sanctuary grounds. We heard the Salt Lake Planning Commission thank the developer for working with the community, which was disappointing because we were never involved in any such meetings. We were disappointed that the Poplar Grove Community Council approved the development without contacting us for any feedback or concerns. We are opposed to the rezoning of the property RMU that will pave the way for the developer to construct a 75-foot tall building that will surround us along two sides of our sanctuary. Without a building that high, there will be added noise from the freeway that will be reflected onto our sanctuary, diminishing what peacefulness we have, and this will affect our practices of meditation. In addition, our meditations have components to them, one of which is sunlight. We consider sunlight to have spiritual benefits, and a building this tall will significantly affect the sunlight that shines on our sanctuary. There will be times of the years where we won't have any sun at all. We've encountered governmental burdens before, and by doing this rezoning, you would be facilitating the construction of a building that will place another burden on us and infringe our rights. We understand there are housing needs and things change, but there are also religious needs which are guaranteed by our Constitution. Instead of rezoning the property to RMU, we ask that you consider rezoning the property to RMU 35, which is more reasonable for our situation. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Following Bernie, we have Sue Menu, followed by Ian Percy, and then Maximilian Cora. A moment while I unmute Sue. Sue, you've been unmuted.
Hi, my name is Sue Manu. I am the president and corporate soul of Summum, and we oppose the rezoning of this property to RMU. We would prefer for you to think about our religion and our sanctuary that we have built and beautified for over 40 years. With the tall building they plan to make, it is going to obliterate our gardens and our greenhouse where we grow spiritual plants for our members to partake and help them with their spiritual progression. We will not see sunlight during the winter, and you are putting an undue burden on us, an undue financial burden, which is not unusual for this town for us. And I would rather that you rezoned RMU 35. I think it would be nice to have the area beautified. However, that tall of a building is going to totally encapsulate us in darkness during the winter. And our greenhouse, we will have to have lights, and we will have to have locks on all of our buildings to protect it from people wanting to come over and investigate and try and open up our pyramid, which has already happened. And I just think that you need to reconsider what kind of a building you are going to put there. It is totally unnecessary to have it that high. The only thing involved in it is money. That's basically what it's all about. And parking is going to be a problem for our members because there will be parking all along the street. With all of those numbers of people and visitors to the place, we are not going to have any place to put our members. I would prefer the other zone.
Thank you for your comments.
Following Sue, we have Ian Percy, and then Maximilian Cora, and then Brenda Shear. One moment while I unmute Ian. Ian, you're unmuted.
Hi, good evening, City Council. Thank you for letting me speak tonight. My name is Ian Percy. My wife and I have been residents of the Liberty Wells neighborhood near 900 South for over 10 years, and my wife has been a small business owner on 900 South for the past 5. I also work for the developer of this project. Tonight, I am speaking in support of this rezone as a resident of Salt Lake City. I believe the requested rezone from manufacturing to residential RMU is appropriate for the redevelopment of these vacant parcels, which up until 2 years ago were still being used in salvage yards. And I think it's important for those listening tonight to know that under the M1 zoning, we would be allowed on these properties to build up to 65 feet. And under the RMU zone, it would only increase that height up to 75 feet. The RMU zone will allow the residential density needed to activate this portion of 900 South by bringing residents to the neighborhood who will visit local businesses and increase utilization of the city's infrastructure investments in the 900 South corridor. The seeds of change in this neighborhood are already underway with the creation of the 9-line bike park, the Wasatch Community Garden plots, the Three Creeks reconstruction, and the planned 900 South reconstruction beginning in Central Ninth this summer. I believe this project will be a positive catalyst for change in the neighborhood and will serve as a significant gateway to the west side along the 900 South corridor. In the near future, I look forward to riding bikes with my wife and kids down the new 9-line trail from Liberty Park to the Jordan River and stopping for a snack at this development along the way. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Following Ian, we have Maximilian Cora, followed by Brenda Shear, and then Melanie Pearson. One moment while I unmute Maximilian. Max, you've been unmuted.
Thank you so much. Good evening. I'm Max Karath. I'm actually the applicant. I just wanted to take my 2 minutes to sort of give a little bit of perspective on what we're trying to do. You know, one of the things we did over 2 years ago, as Dennis mentioned, before we actually bought the properties, we engaged the community, asking a lot of questions. One of the things that kept coming back was, you know, we'd love to see more businesses on this side of the tracks in Poplar Grove. And so one of the ideas that we had was to sort of renovate those two beautiful barrel roof buildings that are sort of along the alley that we've spoken about, and to sort of attract businesses, to have, you know, potentially restaurants, coffee shop, et cetera, et cetera. One of the things we found out over the last 2 years is one of the reasons those businesses aren't really migrating there is just the density of this community is just not that big. And there's just not enough residents to support the businesses that the community would like to see. So it's one of the reasons that we decided to keep those buildings as they are. To, like I said, we did, we're very thankful. We went to the RDA to support, you know, doing an adaptive reuse of those two buildings so we can eventually bring, like I said, those restaurants and coffee shops there. But I think to really support those businesses, for them to survive and come there, we do need some density. And I think given the proximity to the freeway, the existing M1 zoning, which already allows for 65 feet, we certainly feel it's an appropriate place, given the master plan of Salt Lake City, to create nodes of density along certain corridors. This is, in our view, according to the master plan, a perfect place to do that. That's what the community really, I think, would need to support the businesses that it wants to see there. Thank you so much.
Thanks for your comments.
Following Max, we have Brenda Shear, followed by Melanie Pearson and Dennis Ferris. One moment while I unmute Brenda. Brenda, you're unmuted.
Thank you. The Planning Commission did support this particular project, and partly because of the issues that were just talked about by the applicant, but about especially concerning the sort of burgeoning activities along 9th South, particularly Central 9th, but also the 9 line, as places where we could densify some activities. I think in relationship to the Summum pyramid, that sanctuary that is there, I think this is a difficult decision. We did have some issues with the height, but I'm just leaving that there as a comment for council to consider. In the end, because the zoning is already approving of some certain amount of height, this was not an easy decision, but we did admit to go ahead and allow this to recommend this rezoning. Thank you.
Thank you.
Following Brenda, we have Melanie Pearson, followed by Dennis Ferris and then Justin Hepler. One moment as I unmute Melanie. Melanie, you're unmuted. Melanie Pearson, you're unmuted.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yep, go ahead.
Sorry about that. Good evening. This is Melanie Pearson from the Poplar Grove Community Council, and also a Poplar Grove resident. And I just wanted to speak in favor of this project, the initiatives that Mr. Korath and the Highboy Ventures to transform the stretch. We as a council and me personally support mixed use development, especially along this stretch. We recognize the housing needs in our Salt Lake City communities, and that they are great, and that we are sensitive, that we encourage community sensitive development to help meet the ever increasing need of this. We also support affordability for residents, both individual and commercial. Looking forward to a time when small, local, culturally applicable businesses inhabit the commercial spaces on the block. We appreciate the developer's willingness to have active outreach with us, and hope that it will continue. And if there's anything that we or I can do we, the Poplar Grove Community Council, can do to help and be invested in this process, we are all ears.
Thanks for your comments.
Council Chair, following Melanie, we have Dennis Ferris, followed by Justin Hepler, and then Devin O'Donnell. One moment while I unmute Dennis. Dennis, you're unmuted.
Hello. This developer came to the Poplar Grove Community Council about 2.5 years ago when I was chair, and brought his designer, asked to meet with us simply to ask, hey, I'm considering purchasing this property. What would the community like to be here? Listened to all of our inputs, applied that input, salvaging, refurbishing the barrel roof buildings, creating them as viable spaces for small local businesses that we so desperately need in this neighborhood. Coffee shops, bike shops, bakeries, delis. Since then, he has volunteered his space for us to use as a meeting place to discuss the project. Offered additional manpower to assist in getting the word out about that meeting that we did take him up on. So I personally knocked on every door around that block, and anyone that didn't answer, we dropped off flyers too as well about that meeting. So we certainly did our best to outreach to everyone and engage them, bring them in on the project and get some feedback early on. And again, all that feedback was applied and taken very well. So I still continue to support the entire project and think that this bringing the zoning of this space into more in line with what the usage of that block already is, because it is predominantly residential right now, rather than the M1, would be a great benefit for the neighborhood. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Council Chair, following Dennis, we have Justin Hepler, followed by Devin O'Donnell, then Sina Quintanilla. One moment while I unmute Justin. Justin, you are unmuted.
Thank you. Members of the council, I'm Justin Hepler with AJC Architects, working with Highboy Ventures on the future project that will go on this site. Excited about the opportunity to help continue to reinvigorate and build neighborhoods of Salt Lake City, especially with the momentum that will be coming with the 9th South redevelopment. Just want to address some items quickly related to why the RMU zone is appropriate to this site. For one, it is consistent with the Poplar Grove Area Master Plan that encourages density in these nodes along the freeway, in particular in 9th South. It allows for a unit density and some flexibility in unit density that will provide the critical mass to reinvigorate the site and neighborhood and be supportive to the new businesses that will come and also the existing businesses in the neighborhood. It allows for a height consistent with the master plan itself, and then reasonably similar to the height allowed with the existing M1 zone. It is basically, it de-incentivizes development that does not have residential component to it by limiting the height of that. So it encourages the developer to move forward with the residential development in this neighborhood. And then the developer has expressed that he's not going to try to stretch that height or ask for anything in addition to the 75 feet. It also discourages surface parking on the site and encourages parking to be basically in a screen parking structure by increasing the setback if any surface parking was to be installed on this as part of the plan. And then part with the D2 design standards that have been discussed, the RMU zone will be basically given the tools it needs to encourage a streetscape development that is sidewalk friendly and really encourages the pedestrian experience and the connection to 900 South and just basically the general walkability of the neighborhood. One thing that had come up in the work session a couple weeks ago is a question on why form-based zones weren't being looked at. Okay, thank you.
Thanks for your comments, and we can take more feedback, like I said, online or by telephone as well.
Following Justin, we will have Devin O'Donnell, followed by Ksenia and then Ryan McMullen. One moment while I unmute Devin. Devin, you've been unmuted.
Hi, thank you. Actually, if it's okay, I'd prefer to hold my comment for the next hearing.
Thank you.
Sounds good. Thank you. Next, we will have Ksenia. One moment while I unmute her. Ksenia, you are now muted.
Hi, yes. I'd like to save my comment for the public comment portion, but just say one quick thing before I leave my comment for the rest. I see now that there are 4 to 5 rezoning requests that are commercial rezoning requests on this agenda item today. And we have been lobbying the mayor as well as the city council several months to please rezone some land for the unsheltered. And it really hurts my heart that there are all these commercial interests that take precedence over real lives that are being wasted and dying on the streets. And I would please urge you, please listen to the voices that are voiceless. Listen to those that have no place to go, rather than just putting all your emphasis on bolstering business interests, because they need our help. This is what the city council is for, is to speak up for those that have no voice. So thank you so much. And I would still like to reserve my comment for the latter portion. Thank you.
We will have general public comment at the end of the meeting. These are specific to specific requests by property owners. So other folks who'd like to comment on this particular issue, please do so. If you have other comments, we do have that public forum at the end of the meeting.
Council Chair, next we have Ryan McMullen, followed by Annie Charles, and then George Chapman. Ryan, you're unmuted.
Thank you very much. My name is Ryan McMullen. I am an architect here in Salt Lake City and a full-time resident of the Liberty Wells neighborhood. My wife and I actually just purchased a sort of blighted property just outside of the International Peace Gardens on the west side to hopefully someday be able to afford to build a little single-family residence for ourselves. And start to invest in the west side. And I think Salt Lake City's got a lot of big plans for this sort of westward movement using 9th South as the corridor. Really excited to see the development and growth with the 9 Line Trail in particular, to echo some of the things we've talked about earlier with the pods of 9th and 9th and the success of just that retail core between Central 9th and 9th and 9th. I think this is a great stepping stone to continue that development west and hopefully sort of kickstart the city's investment in that 9 Line and these street improvements that will one day connect the International Peace Gardens to Liberty Park and 9th and 9th and just create a great walkable local community core. This redevelopment makes a lot of sense to me to put multifamily residential along it. So I'm definitely in support of it. I don't think going from 65 to 75 feet should be a major consideration, since right next to it is, our main freeway that cuts through the valley. And then just on the other side of the freeway is the sort of horror house, whether we like it or not, sort of billboard right next to this same location. So in my mind, if that height seems to be the challenge, and 75 feet doesn't seem that much higher than 65, especially considering location against the freeway. So thank you very much.
Thanks for your comments.
Council Chair, next we have Annie Charles. Annie, you are unmuted.
Thanks. I wasn't going to originally speak on this piece, but after hearing all the comments, I just wanted to note a couple of things. I was really encouraged by hearing how much outreach was done to the community directly to make sure that they did approve of what was happening with the space and the amount of refurbishing that's going to be done. A couple concerning things were a lot of stigmatizing language against low-income housing. I think if you actually look at research that the Salt Lake Tribune just did, it actually increases property values for people and really helps communities to be able to provide that housing for people. And if we're really trying to create spiritual communities within our living spaces, we should be willing to reach out to people and cooperate in these ways. And it seemed somewhat exclusionary the way people were talking. I went to a religious institution for college, and it did a lot of outreach to the community that it was a part of. And I really loved that about it. It was trying to better the community and trying to really involve the community as much as possible. And just the language was concerning to me that I was hearing. So I just wanted to comment on that.
Thanks for your comments.
Council Chair, next we have George Chapman, followed by Alice Betts. George, you are unmuted.
Okay, Council, I wasn't going to comment on this, but a couple of comments from the group, the religious group, indicated that I better comment because over the last 10 years, this council has had several significant problems with adjacent properties ending up in shadows. If any of you remember Life, the Universe, and Sugar House, that was one of the starting issues. We've seen a lot of plans come through that actually check shadows to make sure that adjacent properties aren't impacted. And creating shadows is an objective problem that can result, in my opinion, in a lawsuit against Salt Lake City. Negative impacts, if objective, can be result in a lawsuit, and that's the problem. So we've had arguments back and forth, but shadows seem to be a really, really important issue. The noise is also, if it's reflecting noise, I remember on the East Bench, we've had problems that UDOT had to mitigate because of it. My point is that Salt Lake City should go through the attorney's office and double check and make sure that you're not stepping into an area where you could be sued. Those are my comments. Thanks for listening.
Thanks, George.
Next, we have Alice Betts. Alice, you are unmuted.
Thanks, I changed my mind. You guys are doing great.
Okay, thanks, Alice.
Council Chair, that's the last commenter for this item.
Okay. Well, thank you to everybody who made a comment on this item, and I'll look for a motion from the council at this point.
Mr. Chair, I move the council close the public hearing and defer action to a future council meeting.
Second.
We have a motion from Councilmember Rogers and a second from Councilmember Wharton, I believe. Any discussion on this item? All right, if none, I'll take a roll call. Councilmember Rogers?
Yes.
Councilmember Wharton?
Yes.
Councilmember Valdemoros?
Yes.
Councilmember Mono?
Yes.
Councilmember Dugan?
Yes.
And I'm a yes as well. That motion passes with Councilmember Fowler absent. That brings us to item B3, our third public hearing, regarding an ordinance that would amend the Sugar House Master Plan and zoning map for property at 2903 South Island Drive. Again, before we begin taking public comments, I will first turn the time over to Brian Fulmer, Council Staff Policy Analyst, to give a short introduction.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This property is currently split zoned or has two different zoning designations. The portion fronting Highland Drive is zoned CB or community business, and the eastern approximately 1/3 of the property is zoned R17000 or residential. That portion fronts on Zenith Avenue. And if approved, the two parcels would take on the single CB or community business zoning designation. And that is my introduction.
Thanks, Brian. Robert, please start with our first public comment.
Certainly, Council Chair. The first commenter we have is Brenda Shear, followed by Christina Casenya, and then Emily Allworth. Brenda, you are unmuted.
Thank you. I just would like to support this application. Is in, we've been in favor of this, so thank you.
Thank you.
After Brenda, we have Christina Ksenia. Kisna, you're unmuted.
First of all, thank you so much for your very adept attempt at my name. I'd like to reserve my public comment for later, but thank you so much. I appreciate all you're doing.
Thanks for your patience with our pronunciation. We'll see you later.
It's really actually.
Oh. We'll try her again in public comment.
The next commenter is Emily Allworth, who I no longer see here. Council Chair, we don't have any more commenters for this item.
Okay, well, thanks for everyone who made a comment, and I'll look for a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move that the council close the public hearing and defer action to a future council meeting. Second.
We have a motion from Councilmember Wharton, a second from, I'll say Councilmember Rogers is a guest here. And any comment on this item? All right, if none, we'll take it.
Mr. Chair, it wasn't I who did. It wasn't me that did that.
I think he's the only one that didn't.
I'll say Councilmember Mono then. Does that sound right? All right, we have a second by Councilmember Mono, and Councilmember Duden will call in. We'll do another one later on. Any discussion on this item? All right, Councilmember Rogers, a vote.
Yes.
Councilmember Wharton.
Yes.
Councilmember Valdemoros.
Yes.
Councilmember Mono.
Yes.
Councilmember Dugan.
Yes.
And I am a yes as well. That motion passes. We are now at item B4, a public hearing regarding an ordinance that would rezone the properties at 1301 and 1321 South State Street. And again, before we take public comments, I'll turn some time over to Brian Fulmer, our council staff policy analyst, to give an introduction to this item.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a proposal to change the properties you mentioned from corridor commercial or CC to form-based urban neighborhood 2 or FBUN2 zoning and amend the table of the zoning ordinance to allow for some additional height. And that would be used to potentially develop a new mixed-use building, which would replace the current buildings on the parcel. That's my introduction.
Thank you, Brian. All right, Robert, please start with our first public comment.
Hey, Council Chair, the first person we have to speak is Jen Colby, followed by Brenda Shear, and then Devin O'Donnell. Jen Colby, you've been unmuted.
Great, thanks. Yeah, Jen Colby. As I was preparing my comments for the 200 South and Lincoln Street hearing, I spotted this hearing on tonight's agenda. After reviewing it, I support the zoning amendment for this location on State Street with suggestions. I first want to contrast this application to the 200 South and Lincoln Street situation. They are in many ways the mirror images of each other. In both cases, the unanimous Planning Commission votes should be ratified by the council. For these State Street properties, that means a yes vote for the amendments because the planning staff recommended and commission voted unanimously to forward a positive recommendation to the council. Community council and public comments were also largely positive. This is the exact opposite of the 200 South and Lincoln Street properties case. I visited the State Street properties this week and feel the current buildings are beyond their design life and add nothing to the neighborhood fabric. A mixed-use project would be beneficial with form-based guidelines already in place. This is especially true because the project will add substantial housing where, under current zoning, residential units are not allowed. This is exactly how and where the city should be adding housing to address the gap. The zoning amendments approval should be straightforward. However, the applicant is also asking for additional height allowance. This is where the city should negotiate for tangible community benefits back from the developer. Frankly, development agreements seem largely unenforceable, so this needs to be structured to be readily verifiable. Concessions should only be negotiated if the owner and developer have a good track record and no rap sheet of civil, building code, delinquency, or other violations. Any requirement should be an ordinance, not side agreements, wherever possible. For the extra height, the city could require a certain number of smaller condo units at a lower price point, or a LEED certified building that would lower tenant and owner costs over time and help advance city sustainability goals, or lease a certain number of commercial spaces at reduced rents to local businesses and nonprofits or something similar. I recommend more time to explore these before a final vote. Thank you.
Thanks for your comments.
Following Jen Colby, we have Brenda Shear, followed by Devin O'Donnell, and then Catherine Jazik. Brenda, you are unmuted.
Thank you. This particular proposal at State Street and 13th South is a very important corner in the city. It's got a lot of visibility. I think that we are looking at changing from a corridor commercial zoning to an FBUN2 form-based code, and then allowing a higher, taller building at this area. This is a particular location where I believe that a taller building is important, and to help hold that corner and to give it some character. And it goes along with the city's need for higher density housing, and allows us to have a design review on this and particular property. So in general, this is a very good change, especially from corridor commercial. As a matter of policy, I believe that the city council should empower the planning department to look at changing corridor commercial wherever it appears throughout the city, as it is an old-fashioned zone that allows the kind of building that's actually on here, which are sort of low-rise commercial, strip commercial buildings, drive-throughs and so forth. And as our city matures, these kinds of uses should be phased out in favor of more urban density and pedestrian-oriented activities. Thank you.
Council Chair, next we have Devin O'Donnell, followed by Catherine Jazik, and then Alice Betts. Devin, you're unmuted.
Sorry, my apologies. I should have clarified that I wanted to hold my comment for the public comment at the end.
That's totally fine. Thanks.
One moment while I find Catherine Jazik. Catherine, you are unmuted now.
Oh, I apologize. I'm a newbie, so I do apologize. I actually will like to be at the very end with the public, I guess. But I do say that I do support State Street being modernized. I find that seeing all those old buildings that used to be great and no longer are, I find that all these developers are trying to push in on areas that that we're just getting really overpopulated in such a small area. So when I see things being built on State, I look at it and I, yay! But at the same time, we find that developers want to be in a popular area. But if you beautified State Street more, I think people would want to develop there more, if that makes sense. I don't know, but I will move on. Sorry. If I can go to the end, that'd be great.
That's no problem. Thanks for your comments.
Council Chair, next we have Alice Betts. Alice, you're unmuted.
Hi, it sounds like I concur with what everybody else has been saying so far. I was going to chime in and push for higher buildings, especially from there south on State Street. Build them up and kind of bring some character back to the area because it looks run down in 70s.
Thanks for your comments.
Council Chair, we don't have any more commenters for this item.
Okay. Well, thanks everybody who made a comment here. And I'll look for a motion from the council.
Mr. Chair, I move the council close the public hearing and defer action to a future council meeting.
Second.
I have a motion from Councilmember Rogers and a second from Councilmember Dubin. Any comment on this item? If not, we'll go to a vote. Councilmember Rogers.
Yes.
Councilmember Wharton.
Yes.
Councilmember Valdemoros.
Yes.
Councilmember Mono,
Yes.
and Councilmember Dugan.
Yes.
And I am a yes as well. That's unanimous, and that motion passes with Councilmember Fowler absent tonight. That brings us to our last public hearing item, B5, regarding an ordinance that would amend the zoning map and central community master plan. The property is located at 159 South Lincoln Street, 949 East, 955 East, 959 East, and 963 East, 200 South. Before we take public comments again, we'll turn the time over to Brian Fulmer, Council Staff Policy Analyst, to give a short introduction.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The proposal would change the zoning on the properties you mentioned from R2, single and two-family residential, to RMF 35, which is moderate density multifamily residential. And the applicant indicated a desire to develop multifamily residential housing on the property, and it would create more density than what is currently allowed under the existing zoning.
All right. Well, thanks, Brian. And Robert, please start with our first public comment on this item.
Hey, Council Chair. First, we have Catherine Bielli, followed by Drew Rabadou, and then Gwen Chris. Catherine, you are unmuted.
Thank you. I'm Catherine Bealey. I own a small duplex in the neighborhood, and I'm also a member of St. Paul's Episcopal Church, both of which are just around the corner from Lincoln Street. While I understand the anxiety over housing, and of course affordable housing, I'm curious about the willingness to so radically change the character of historic neighborhoods. This is our community. I see high-rise, multi-use construction throughout the city. This is inevitable, but it's spreading malignantly into neighborhoods that offer affordable housing and a sense of shared community. These are 5 structures that will be lost, along with the heritage they represent. This plan is just the beginning. St. Paul's is looking to tear down 2 more historic structures in the neighborhood, and I'm saddened by that direction. They'll tell you they're planning a community garden and another short-term private parking lot. Neither option would add to the housing mix, but again, destroy character. I'm also a resident of the Yale Crest area, so I'm a witness to the massive teardowns of historic homes in our city. I would ask you to consider the role of respect for our historic neighborhoods and stop this demolition derby. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Jude Rabadou, followed by Gwen Chris, and then Tamara Pittman. Jude, you are unmuted.
Good evening. I appreciate Salt Lake City Council, East Central Community, the mayor, the planning commission. You guys have put a lot of work into this project. I just happen to live a block up the street on 200 South from these guys. I've lived here since 1992. I know those houses are run down, but I know a lot of people who live there didn't have funds to live somewhere fancy. I didn't really like the crazy ass parties they had, pardon the language. I really enjoy the streetscape, the historical streetscape of 200 South, the human scale, houses, the setbacks, the respect for how the place looks. And that means how it's useful to us humans. Those properties are available for significant historical tax credits. I have used them a couple of times in my life, and they were amazing. And they weren't really limiting the quality of work on property. They just wanted things to be done right. I ask that you please respect to keep the existing code for R2, and they can have their little houses add on in the back and stuff. I really am not in favor of the rezone. Thank you very much.
Thanks for your comments. And just a reminder for everybody, just be real careful about our language as we go forward. Appreciate it.
Council Chair, next we have Gwen Chris, followed by Kelsey Mass, and then Jen Colby. Gwen, you're unmuted.
Hi, my name is Gwen Chris. Thank you for taking my comments tonight. I am opposed to this rezoning request. As a resident of the University neighborhood, I am very concerned about the trend toward higher density and rezoning that is not consistent with current ordinances and the city's master plan. This trend is rapidly changing the character, historic nature, and affordability of our area, removing older homes and replacing them with high market value, multiple units that do not fit the neighborhood. This rezoning would set a bad precedent that other developers would then use as a way to do this on even more properties. I have seen this all over the neighborhood. These historic homes should be refurbished to provide housing that continues to fit in the neighborhood and continues to create a neighborhood that is friendly and respectful of its residents. I ask that the council uphold its own ordinances, the professional work of city planners, and the unanimous planning commission no vote on this project, and the overwhelming opposition from neighbors and the community. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your comments.
Next we have Kelsey Mass. Kelsey, you are unmuted.
Hi, thanks for your time. I'm speaking as a representative of the nonprofit Preservation Utah. So we first want to recognize the timeless work of the local community who has made their homes in the Bryant neighborhood and clearly deeply care about the long-term sustainability of its makeup and the zoning decisions that will affect them for years to come. All 5 historic homes are contributing to the Salt Lake City East Side Historic District on the National Register of Historic Places. Being on the National Register recognizes their significance, but doesn't offer any protections. As previously noted, these homes would be eligible for tax credits, both at the state and federal level. So this could total up to 40% in tax credits towards the rehab costs. We're a little curious why there's been little to no effort to utilize these existing incentives. Rehabilitation would not only result in more environmentally sustainable practices by preventing 5 demoed homes from going to the landfill, but in maintaining the integrity of the historic district and continuing the legacies of 5 homes that are from 124 to 131 years old and have long contributed to the neighborhood and Salt Lake. So please do not reward the developer with a zoning density increase. They've done nothing to merit this benefit. On a personal level, I'm a resident of District 4 and I'm extremely concerned at the precedent this is going to set. I reside in the central city and I see more and more large-scale apartment structures developed that are completely out of scale with the historic fabric of the neighborhood. As a millennial, I hope to one day to be able to afford to buy a home, and since moving to Salt Lake, all I hear about is the housing crisis, yet I'm alarmed by the amount of decisions that incentivize the demolition of naturally occurring affordable housing, which is typically also historic, for fast developments that will only offer more expensive options and typically only for rent. Creating more housing units that are more expensive while destroying the charm of Salt Lake simply is not sustainable for the long term. Thank you so much.
Thanks for your comments.
Council Chair, next we have Jen Colby, followed by Monica Hilding, and then Esther Hunter. Jen, you're unmuted.
Okay, yeah, Jen Colby. So it is clear from the voluminous public record that the rezoning application fails to meet the standards in the city code, is inconsistent with the Central City Master Plan, and has no justification whatsoever. Additionally, the original application and comments made by the owner representatives during this process have contained numerous apparent factual errors, misstatements, and misrepresentations. This includes taking elements of city plans out of context that do not actually support their argument upon scrutiny. Of course, parties seeking an amendment will present their case in the best light. However, they have appeared to go well beyond that in their attempts to persuade. The claim that this amendment is, quote, necessary to allow applicants proposed use of the parcels, unquote, is not relevant to given the master plan, nor a rational basis for approval. Extensive case law supports the authority of cities to control zoning and land use regardless of an owner's desires. They should just buy appropriate land for their proposed use elsewhere. The owners still have many options in the R2 zoning for these parcels. They can sell some or all of them. They can redesign the projects to fit in the current zoning or rehab the buildings, my preference. and resume rentals to more tenants or a mix of these. Demolition by neglect is no excuse for a rezone. This property owner behavior should not be rewarded. Other applicants who have lost their case at the Planning Commission in recent past have accepted the vote and gone back to the drawing board within their zoning to good effect, such as the Haxton Apartments on 9th East. Please uphold existing council-approved district master plans. The goals and land use policies in our master plan are more relevant today than ever. On a personal note, I, along with many neighbors, have been forced to spend hundreds of hours of personal volunteer time and emotional labor in order to challenge this application. This has fallen largely on women, unsurprisingly, and has been costly. I'm sad to say I felt compelled to make the effort because I did not fully trust the process. Luckily, so far the trust has been restored thanks to the professional work of city planners and the commission. This should not be a hard decision. Please vote no. Thank you.
Thank you.
Council Chair, next we have Monica Hilding, followed by Esther Hunter, and then Marianne Wright. One moment while I unmute Monica. Monica, you are unmuted.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, my name is Monica Hilding, and I'm a longtime resident in District 4. I have been working on my home and garden on Lincoln Street for over 30 years. I happen to live next door to the properties that we're discussing. My numerous letters and comments against this rezone are part of the public record. The planning staff report makes it crystal clear that the application does not meet the legal criteria in the zoning ordinance. The Planning Commission agreed unanimously. Numerous phone calls and emails from residents in your districts give you plenty of reasons to vote no on this application. As I've listened to other people talk about this, I agree with everything that has been said. Many of the people who have lived in these homes over the years, I've known them. It is affordable housing. It was affordable housing, and it continues to be affordable housing. Many of the homes in this neighborhood are older homes that have been divided into 4, 5, and 6 apartments. And that's, I think, what would be possible with these lovely old Victorians. I would hate to see them torn down, but I would especially hate to see the landlords who have owned these buildings for 30 years that I have had as my neighbors, who have done nothing to maintain these properties, be rewarded with a rezone that would actually increase the values of their properties. I urge you to please vote no on this rezone. Thank you.
Thanks for your comments.
Next we have Esther Hunter, followed by Marianne Wright, and then Polly Hart. One moment while I unmute Esther. Esther, you've been unmuted.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes, you can.
Great. I'm Esther Hunter. I'm the chair of East Central Community Council, and I've been a long-term resident of this neighborhood. I would like to emphasize 2 points in addition to the many thoughtful comments and emails that the community has sent to you. First, this application, if it were approved, does not add housing to Salt Lake City. Instead, it displaces low and moderate priced workforce units with market rate apartments. This proposal is actually the first of 3 large spot zone requests in our area that are wending their way towards your consideration that displace core and needed housing stock in our neighborhood. As you know, the East Central community spans from South Temple to 9th South and from the edge of the university on 14th East to 7th East. It carries the highest density in Salt Lake City with approximately 9,289 people per square mile in comparison to the Salt Lake average of 1,776 per square mile. The ECC already provides a large portion of existing affordable priced workforce housing stock on transit and bus routes close to our largest employers. A vast majority of our single family homes, as Monica mentioned, are actually already multifamily ADUs with anywhere from 2 to 6 units per house. The rents range from $750 to $1,250 per unit, compared to market rate apartments in our fixed transit zone on 400 South that range from $1,650 on the low end for one bedroom to $2,600. 2, we sent a snapshot of our zoning map to highlight that there are hundreds of parcels in our neighborhood already available for development that are zoned RMF 35 and 45, close to 200 South and to fixed transit. We were part of the rezoning map effort in '95, as well as the extensive master plan process approved in 2005. We thoughtfully considered quality living for all ages and incomes. Spot zoning.
Thanks for your comments. Again, we can finish your comments offline with our staff or email or call us as well. Thanks, Esther.
Council Chair, next we have Mary Ann Wright, followed by Polly Hart, and then Kathy Campbell. One moment while I unmute Mary Ann. Mary Ann, you've been unmuted.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, council members and mayor. I am Mary Ann Wright. I have lived here for nearly 50 years. Thus, I have been around long enough to recall the efforts of City Council member Sydney Fonsbeck, who saved the avenues from being solid apartment houses. It is my hope that you would see the same thing happening in this area here and stop that. I want to make 3 points. First, there is a tremendous embodied energy in the homes that are proposed to be torn down. And this embodied energy I speak of is the labor that it took to build them, the designers, and the once in a lifetime materials of old growth forest, mined clay, sand, iron, and other minerals that exist in these old homes. This is an extremely important issue as we run through our resources in this day and age. Next, our landfills are 40% construction waste. I do not believe we should be contributing to that. If you approve this, it will continue to be the norm to tear down old homes and put up apartment houses. It costs only about $100 a square foot to renovate these homes and make them wonderful to live in. Last, you do have smart urban planners who should be working with you to help direct investors to better sites of the city that do not require tearing down old homes. Please, I ask you to be proactive and get out in front of this trend. I believe council members need to take a strong stand on this, saving old homes from the landfill and saving neighborhoods from apartmentalization. Thank you for this opportunity to comment.
Thanks for your comments.
Council Chair, next we have Polly Hart, followed by Kathy Campbell, and then Shannon Wells. Polly, you are unmuted.
Thank you. My name is Polly Hart. I years ago was on the Historic Landmarks Commission, and I have a master's degree in historic preservation from the U. So I am quite familiar with the historic neighborhoods of Salt Lake City. I urge you to reject this zoning change request. It is not consistent with the master plan. It is not consistent with the fabric of the neighborhood, and it would reward a slumlord for letting their property deteriorate. Please reject this request. That's it.
Thank you very much.
Council Chair, next we have Kathy Campbell, and followed by Shannon Wells, and then Angela Jensen. One moment while I unmute Kathy. Kathy, you are unmuted.
Hi, thank you for letting me speak tonight. I have a little different angle on this tonight. We are newbies to the neighborhood. We purchased our house in September of last year. We're raising our children. We're walking our dogs in this neighborhood. We love the character of this neighborhood. We moved from the country club area downtown for the charm and the character of this neighborhood. We're about a block and a half down 200 South from this proposed project. one thing I want to bring up is one of the reasons to change zoning is for when there's a need for it. And I can say that I walk my dogs and I walk this neighborhood, drive this neighborhood daily, and there's an abundance of rental and other properties available in this neighborhood. So I don't see a need for a large commercial project. I'm concerned about traffic. I'm concerned about parking. It may be trivial, but living on 2nd South, many times we can't even get our trash cans out on the street because of all of the parking due to some of the apartment complexes that have received apparently zoning, whatever it's called, modifications. So, you know, this is a neighborhood. It's not downtown, and I appreciate an earlier speaker who was comparing this to the State Street project. We are not State Street. We are not downtown. We are a neighborhood. It's a charming neighborhood. We love this neighborhood. And I would ask that, you know, I believe you guys are going to do the right thing. I know that zoning and planning have rejected this application, but in the off chance that you don't, I think that either the applicant or the city need to commission studies on the effect on traffic, public services, and parking to the existing neighbors to add such a high density project. So thank you very much for your time.
Thanks for your comments.
Council Chair, next we have Shannon Wells, followed by Angela Jensen, and then Cindy Cromer. One moment while I unmute Shannon. Shannon, you're unmuted now.
Good evening, council members. I'm Shannon Wells. Please do not rezone these 5 properties. The people who actively live here are invested in the future of this neighborhood, invested in preserving and reviving beautiful historical homes, some of which have stood for nearly a century. I grew up here. I've seen beloved homes beautifully cared for and restored. There are apartment buildings mere blocks away, built in the last decade, that cannot claim the same longevity. Structures built fast and as cheaply as possible for the maximum profit of a select few individuals do not last. A commitment to preserve the neighborhood we have is a better investment in the future of our city. It is more environmentally friendly, less wasteful. Above all else, it's what the residents, the citizens who live here, want. We've tried to make our voices clear. We've fought to preserve this neighborhood. The people trying to change that don't even live here. They are not invested in the future of our community. Do not rezone. Thank you for your time.
Thanks for your comments.
Council Chair, following Shannon, we have Angela Jensen, followed by Cindy Cromer, and then Melinda Main. One moment. Angela, you're unmuted.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Yes, we can.
Okay, wonderful. Hi, my name is Angela Jensen, and I am one of the tenants that was actually evicted from the property at 959 East and 200 South, formerly known as China Blue. So originally Shane Cahoon was the leaseholder, and after 5 years, Shane decided to move out and break the lease. Shane had done many upgrades costing thousands of dollars and never was reimbursed. When Shane first moved in, he had to clean up human feces and blood and still pay a $1,500 deposit. Myself and 2 other tenants entered a new agreement after he decided to move out with the property owner, Michael, that we would sign a new lease agreement for 1 year. Lauren Cook was going to sign the lease, and shortly after the agreement was broken. So potentially, because of the gay flags and the colorful paint on the house, which is now white, we received word on October 20th that Shane would no longer, we would no longer have that, or sorry, August 20th, we were told by Shane, who would no longer live there, that he received a text message from Michael that we had 8 days to vacate. None of the tenants that live there received notice until the day we were supposed to be evicted. We only heard through word of mouth. We were then given till September 12th. We were displaced in a pandemic shutdown, even though PC's daughter, Miss Hoy, told the community council that when it came time to evict people, they would be given help relocating. This was not the case. This will not be the case. We didn't want to leave. We loved living there because of how wonderful Shane had made the house. 2 of the 3 of us were insurance contractors, and we all had good paying jobs. I am college educated. I was displaced. There was no reason to evict, except that we were the ones that spoke out against the rezoning. They did not help us relocate, and the words cannot be trusted.
Thanks for your comments. Bobby, I know you called out 2 more names. Looking at the time at 8:27, I want to ensure the council members have about a 5-minute break after these next 2 names, so they'll be able to take care of their business and come back ready to pay attention to the remainder of the public comment. So we'll take 2 more names, take a 5-minute break, and then we'll resume after that.
Certainly, Council Chair. The next name we have is Cindy Cromer, followed by Melinda Main. One moment. Cindy, you're unmuted.
Hi, I sent you these comments and an attachment this earlier today. In the winter of 1973, I moved 2 blocks east of these houses. I've moved 2 more times since then. My current home is a half block away. Starting in the early 80s, I began working on land use planning for the Bryant area, as it is known. The draft of the first plan called for urban renewal of the houses that my neighbors and I were enjoying living in. The planning director at the time had a vision of an office park between downtown and the university. We and our houses were in the way. We pushed back. By 1984, the city recognized that the office buildings built at the expense of housing had not been a good idea. The attachment that you received lists all of the city's neighborhood plans. The 12-block area known as Bryant is the most frequently studied part of the city. There are more plans, more commitments to citizens, and more participation by citizens than anywhere else in the city. One of the plans was funded by HUD. A planner, Elizabeth Giroux, donated her time to complete the nomination for the National Register. In 2012, the Planning Division committed to keep the increased density on the transit corridor and has done so since, with the recommendation in this case and for the redevelopment on 900 East, now known as the Haxton. The embodied energy in these plans is staggering. My own investment represents most of my life as an adult. The investment the city has made to get us to this recommendation is also staggering. You cannot waste the time that so many citizens and city employees have spent, or the funds that previous city council members and the federal government have authorized. The potential for additional housing exists in the Bryant neighborhood, and it is where the housing was removed, not where it still exists. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And following Cindy, we have Melinda Main. Melinda, you've been unmuted.
Okay, great. I would like to speak against this rezone and add my support to all the other comments that have been made tonight regarding a lack of commitment to rezoning. I am the Bryant Neighborhood Chair. I work with the East Central Community Council. I live on 200 South, and I've been in the neighborhood for over 40 years, and I have an old historic home. And I know some of the past owners that have put their heart and souls into these older structures to make them viable. Doesn't mean they get a huge reward at the end by the time they sell it with all the monies they've put into it, but it's a delightful area to live, and it's a labor of love for these old homes. And being a realtor, I'm in support of people having land rights, but I'm not in support of them being able to land bank and then get an upzone on properties. And I am aware also, because I'm privy to this kind of information, of other investors that are in the area land banking in hopes that in the future the city and the master plans will change for them and their benefit. And I would just like to leave one quote here by a prominent author: "To solve the future, we must save the past. And I thank you for your time.
Thank you for your time and comment. As I mentioned a second ago, I want to ensure council members can take a 5-minute break starting now, so they'll be ready to come back and listen attentively. We will resume the public comment on this item at 8:36. We'll be right back. SLC TV, you guys still ready? Perfect. Let's, we're gonna end our break and restart into public comment. Bobby, whenever you're ready.
Thank you, Council Chair. The next we have Brenda Shear, followed by Vincent Grabowski, and then Sanford Meek. Brenda, you're unmuted.
Thank you. I speak as the current Salt Lake City Planning Commission chair, but also as a fellow of the American Institute of Architects and a fellow of the American Institute of Certified Planners. Community plans have impact, they have consequences, and they are intentions that we together have for our growth. In parts of the city, our plans are unfortunately outdated and do not reflect what the people of the community envision. In those cases, the Planning Commission often supports a recommendation to change zoning, especially in support of other goals like a more livable and walkable city with more housing opportunities. We are, of course, a very busy city. Our professional planning staff is amazing, but even they cannot keep up with all the small area plans that need modification, just as I noted in the CC zone on State Street that we just talked about. However, in this instance, it is my observation that the Planning Commission and the staff did not find that the current zoning was inappropriate or outdated. It seemed to be in line with the scale of the neighborhood and the intention and objectives of the master plan. In particular, the master plan calls for stability for the lower density designations in this area. The subject properties, particularly on 200 South, are adjacent to low-density residential to the east, west, and north, and the proposed zoning district, higher density RMF 35 zoning district, would result in development that is not compatible in terms of height, massing, and scale of the adjacent properties, not to mention the loss of the historic buildings themselves. As such, I do not recommend changing the zoning or the master plan associated with the future land use map. Thank you.
Thank you.
Council Chair, next we have Vincent Grabowski, followed by Sanford Meek, and then Penny Davis. Vincent, you are unmuted. Vincent, you're unmuted. Vincent, I show that you're unmuted. We will troubleshoot with Vincent and come back to him. We will go ahead and move on to Sanford Meek. Sanford, you're unmuted.
Thank you. Thanks for staying up late. I've been on for 12 hours of Zooming today already, so I appreciate you guys sticking around for this. My wife and I have lived right across the street from this property for the last near 25 years, restoring an old house. And many people in this neighborhood are restoring these old houses. It is a historic district. And I kind of look at zoning as kind of the rebuttable presumption that the presumption is you don't do it unless you have a good rebuttal for that. And I have not seen a good rebuttal to change the zoning of this area. When I work up at the university, I have many of my students who live around here. They're not going to be living in the proposed building they have there. You're basically would be displacing affordable housing, albeit not in the best of shape, but that's not their problem. It was the land property owners who have not maintained this property for decades. Basically, in fact, I'm very much opposed to it. I see that the planning people have unanimously opposed this rezone, and I have not seen or heard any reason to rezone it. It was brought up earlier, this study from the university saying how larger density improves value. I just kind of looked at that. It's not flawed, it has some limitations to their conclusions that I don't think match this neighborhood at all. So larger density does not improve the livability and property of this neighborhood. So please turn this proposal down. Thank you.
Thanks for your comments.
Council Chair, we're going to go back to Vincent and see if he has resolved his microphone issues. One moment. Vincent, you're unmuted.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Awesome. Yeah, my name is Vincent, and I'm a recent graduate from the University of Utah with degrees in urban planning and environmental science, and now work as a landscape architect. I am a resident in Salt Lake City and have lived near the proposed rezoning, and therefore the demolishment of these beautiful historic homes. Having walked past these homes and their stately trees every day for over 2 years on my way to and from the university, I vehemently oppose the rezoning of these properties. I can only imagine the way the homeowners around these properties feel in opposition to the rezoning. The rezoning of these properties would negatively impact the character of their surrounding community. Specifically, rezoning this property would reinforce a slippery slope towards the gentrification and demolishment of similar properties, ultimately displacing people and raising the cost of living, while at the same time ruining the sense of place that makes Salt Lake City an attractive place to live. These developers need to grasp the dimensions of their decisions and realize the history and place they'd be erasing. Given the aesthetic and quality of the recent apartment developments in the area, it would be short-sighted and a disservice to the community long-term. I much prefer they refurbish and maintain the homes using the tax credits mentioned earlier rather than tearing them down. Demolition is a choice, not a solution. Vote no. Thank you.
Thanks for your comments.
Following Vincent, we have Penny Davies, followed by Arthur Standack, and then Melissa Hubbell. One moment while I unmute Penny. It looks like Penny has left Council Chair, so we're going to move on to Arthur Standack. One moment, please. Arthur, you're unmuted.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Yeah, my name's Arthur Sandak. I submitted a good deal of correspondence regarding this matter, in which I addressed it quite seriously as I could. I decided with this short time that I've got here to make my comments in blank verse. I'm sorry, I'm no good at rap. That probably wouldn't be permitted anyway. So if you'll please bear with me. I am against this petition like no other. This entire process has been hard to uncover. It will be even harder once the buildings come down. What will I do? Should I leave town? They'll shake up the blocks and maybe my place. I hope when they're done, I'll still have some space. If you believe their promises to help the needy, then believe that of those who are only greedy. If you want to do something right for the city, stand by the master plan and the planning committee. If not, you'll encourage many bad actors. What counts now are our standards and those noble factors. It takes more than words to get to the future. It takes something bigger than just a suture. I'm sorry these buildings at issue don't glisten, but their history is proud if you would just listen. From the halcyon days of Greek immigrants with the newfound freedoms making such a difference, if the buildings were proud and gentrified rather than blighted and brushed aside, if the owners had something at least to give, but no, I don't even know where these people live. Well, I guess I can't hope for an entrepreneur, a rich knight to arrive who's good and pure, to raise the stately Victorian palace of lore. Well, I'll have to settle for Howard's, which is right next door. Have any of you gone and looked, or have you been too heavily booked? This is all I can say of what's left of my minute, what's left of my hope, what wisdom is in it. We'll win it. But with my last breath, I'll again try and plead, my good lords, I beg, please deny. Thank you.
Thanks for your verse.
Next, we have Melissa Hubbell, followed by Scott Andrews, and then Xiao Wei. One moment while I unmute Melissa. Melissa, you're unmuted.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go right ahead.
Thank you. I've lived about a block and a half from the homes that we're talking about for close to 40 years. I bought my rundown, funky, falling down little house at that time, and I've spent the past 40 years fixing it up, improving my yard, improving my home, because I like it here. I like this neighborhood. It's eclectic, it's interesting, and it's full of different wonderful houses. During that 40 years, the people, the landlords of those 5 units have done absolutely nothing for those units. There've been a variety of tenants there, and some of them have fixed the place up. Some of them haven't been so great, but the owners have done nothing. They have done nothing but let those homes deteriorate. And it's a heartbreaking tragedy because they're beautiful houses and they could be a great addition to this neighborhood if only they were cared for. I'm totally opposed to the rezoning because I fear that they'll just build more buildings and let them run down and go to rack and ruin and become a blight on the neighborhood. They'll also increase parking problems, traffic problems, and put a drain on the infrastructure here. So I ask you, please don't approve that blight on our neighborhood. Don't allow those slumlords to destroy the area where we have our homes. Thank you.
Thanks for your comments.
Next, we have Scott Andrews, followed by Xiao Wei, and then Catherine Gisette. Scott, you are unmuted.
I hope everybody can hear me. You know, I never even had a horse in the race on this project. One day I saw a sign at the Eastside Community Council, and I thought, you know, I'm getting older, and I always told myself I was going to get involved, and I never did. And so that day I drove and parked and went to the Catholic high school and attended a meeting. And it happened that day that there was a proposal for a rezone of a series of properties near where I live that had a large parcel of open land in the back that was unoptimized. And I watched people come up with a large series of personal attacks and unreasoned explanations for why these people couldn't pursue their individual liberties to find the highest and best use on the properties that they owned. And I asked myself after the meeting, having felt like I'd never seen so many people personally attack one family, and subsequently I was motivated to go to another meeting only to hear after the post-meeting racial disparity remarks made by people who were involved in the opposition to this family. And it was shocking, and it was in front of the chair. She was sitting next to me along with one of the husband of the couple who is an in-law of this family. And this has bothered me greatly, this whole process of watching this slander. I'm an economist by training at the University of Utah. And I hear a lot of arguments about high density, impact on neighborhoods, transportation, resource utilization. And I want to point out that, you know, if you build more high density units, proximity.
Thanks for your comments. And again, we can take them offline if you want to finish them. Best out.
Council Chair, next we have Shall We, followed by Catherine Gisette, and then Natalie Deepu. Give me one moment. Shall We, you are unmuted.
Hello, good evening, council members. I represent the project, and if passed, our project has actually been amended and will add 10 units of housing stock, with 30% designated to affordable housing stock. It'll diversify the area of housing stock. It actually addresses parking. I know there have been concerns about that expressed tonight. It will add green space to the community. And specifically, this project adds family-centric affordable housing units to an area that doesn't actually have any specifically set aside. Additionally, this project will also contribute to cleaner air in Salt Lake City. Ultimately, the houses on our parcels are old and inefficient, and if we don't receive the rezone approval, because of the inefficiencies and higher maintenance costs, we do have plans to demolish and rebuild 5 units for the luxury rental market. This will be a loss of 4 units, as there are currently a total of 9 units between the 9 buildings. There have been numerous policy papers from the Kinston Policy Institute, as well as other think tanks, with evidence that shows that zoning laws that allow for diverse housing stock and higher density combats the scarcity of affordable housing and burdensome housing prices, while still maintaining and even raising housing values in the areas they are in. It will take your leadership and sometimes making difficult and unpopular decisions to guide our community through this housing crisis that we are facing. Approving this rezone is a strong step forward in that decision. Thank you for your time tonight.
Thanks for your comments.
Next, we have Catherine Gisette, followed by Natalie Deepu, and then Carolyn Lyons. One moment while I unmute Catherine. Catherine, you're unmuted.
Hello, it's me again. I just wanted to, I'm going against this. It's just allowing for changes to zoning in older developed communities is not a good idea. It opens the door for more developers to come in and destroy and overpopulate lovely neighborhoods. I'm over on the Liberty Park area, even though I'm not around there, but I love this neighborhood. It's one of the reasons why I moved here, is because of the houses. With bringing in these developers, you know, and them changing to multi-units, multi-units, it's causing more pollution, more parking problems, and I hate to say it, crime. Not because of the people that get into the properties, but the people that actually visit the properties. And over time, it does become an issue. People talk about, the actual look of these new developments. They do not go with the surrounding areas, and it throws it off. I mean, a good example would be Sugar House. Sugar House used to be a lovely little area to go and visit. We would go up there every Saturday, Sunday, go to all the different shops, and sure enough, now we don't even want to drive down there, nor do we even want to walk, because the street is too tiny and there's so many things going on that it's just absurd. I really do wish that they would push these developers out to areas that really can, have them in that area, via State Street, via any of those areas. That'd be great. I mean, who's to say they couldn't put a beautiful little park in the middle of these developments? Make it more so where it's not just, oh, we got to be by this area or that area. Bring it where the area could be beautified. I don't know. Thank you so much.
Thanks for your comments.
The next speaker is Natalie Deepu, followed by Carolyn Lyons, and then Dustin Dashbrook. One moment. Natalie, you're unmuted.
Thank you. My name is Natalie, and I live just across the street from these 5 houses, just on Lincoln Street, and in a little house built in 1896. And it's a really, small street. There's not a lot of places to park, so that's a big concern for us, the traffic. But mostly it's just heartbreaking to think about the neighborhood and the character being changed so much. I remember going to San Francisco and seeing those like famous houses that you see at the beginning of Full House. And they're just these, you know, iconic houses in San Francisco that I'm sure you guys can all picture in your head right now. And these houses are like that. Once they're gone, they're never coming back. And we don't want to see that happen. And we plan on living in this neighborhood for decades to come. And so we really, really hope that this the zoning is not changed. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Next, we have Carolyn Lyons, followed by Dustin Dastrup, and then Alex Sparks. Carolyn, you are unmuted.
Hi, thank you so much. I appreciate your time. I just wanted to briefly come on and let you know that I am a resident of this neighborhood university district, and I am overwhelmingly opposed to this rezone. I think if anything, the last 30 minutes of listening to comments has made me feel very hopeful that there are many Salt Lake City residents who have the same values and reflect how I'm feeling about the growth that's happening in our city. And I think that we have seen numerous other buildings be replaced by, frankly, low quality, quickly constructed housing with absolutely no character that does not contribute to our community. And I think that as a city council, I really urge you to consider putting other policies in place to preserve historic buildings. It's very disheartening to have the developer's representative come on and say, you know, even if this zoning isn't approved, they're going to tear down the buildings anyway. So that's very frustrating, and as a member of this community, very disheartening to hear. But I really encourage you to oppose this rezone. Thank you so much.
Following Carolyn, we have Dustin Dastrup. Excuse me, Council Chair. My apologies.
Oh, late. Sorry. Go ahead.
After Carolyn, we have Dustin Dastrup, followed by Alex Sparks. One moment. Dustin, you're unmuted.
Hi. I came to this neighborhood years ago in need of personal repair, much like the neighborhood itself. I walked the streets here and saw so much beautiful potential. I found a wonderful opportunity to work with the owner of a building up the street to assist in restoring the grandeur and character of his family-owned property. And over the past few years, we've worked tirelessly to pay respect to this neighborhood's character and turn something old and tired into something old and beautiful, while being of great benefit to the people living there. I ask what kind of world this would be if some of our cherished artists' works had not been preserved before someone saw their value and contribution. I want to make a personal appeal to the owners of the properties. Please visit the properties again and look at them through a new lens. Please see the potential and joy in restoring what is there. As someone who is reaping the emotional reward of restoring a historic building, I assure you it is unmatchable. Thank you.
Thank you.
Following Dustin, we have Alex Sparks. Alex, you're unmuted.
Hey, thank you so much. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Hey, I was one of the last few people, the last 3 that lived at that house, and then you heard the story before. They evicted us all and all that fun stuff, saying that they were going to remodel the houses, but it doesn't sound like that's the case. It sounds like they're just trying to rezone it and, you know, put apartments up, but I don't feel like they're qualified to do that. They did paint over the house, but I would be concerned with just like why they want to do that, because there was mold in the bottom of the house. I don't know if that was something they addressed or not. I don't think I have too much else to add, just because there's been like an overwhelming amount of support in favor of not tearing down these houses, in favor of like remodeling instead. So I think I'll just leave it at that.
Well, thanks for your comments.
Thank you.
Council Chair, we have no more speakers for this item.
All right. Well, that is correct. Then I will thank everyone who made a comment tonight on this issue. And I want to look for a motion from the council.
Mr. Chair, I move the council close the public hearing and defer action to a future council meeting.
Second.
We have a motion from Councilmember Rogers and a second from Councilmember Walden-Knowles. Would any council members feel like they need to say something or comment on this discussion?
Mr. Chair.
Go right ahead, Councilmember.
I just have a clarifying question. Are we no longer doing 2 public hearings for land use items? That's a question for staff.
It's a good question.
Yes, that's correct. Yes. The council, sorry, this is Cindy, may I?
Go right ahead, please.
The council decided about 3 months ago that once the double hearings had concluded for that batch, that they would go with the standard practice. We were having a lot of complaints from people that things were taking too long. And I think one of the reasons the council agreed to go back to the main usual process was that people were now getting the hang of the socially distant remote meetings, and we weren't having the complaints we were getting weren't about not getting into the meeting or not having a chance to comment. They were about the process taking too long. So things evolved, and that's why we changed.
Okay, thanks for reminding me.
Any other comments from council? All right, well, seeing none, we'll take a vote. Councilmember Rogers.
Yes.
Councilmember Wharton.
Yes.
Councilmember Walden-Knowles.
Yes.
Councilmember Mono.
Yes.
Councilmember Dugan.
Yes.
And I'm a yes as well, and that motion passes unanimously with Councilmember Fowler absent tonight. With that, we have no potential action items on today's agenda, which brings us to section D of our agenda regarding comments. First portion of the comments section is, are there any questions for the mayor from the council? Well, Mayor, thank you for being here, first of all. And I see Rachel Otto is also on. Any questions to the mayor? I'll take that as a no.
No, I just have
Sorry, go
a
ahead.
comment and tell the mayor that I appreciated the invite for yesterday's memorial of the Salt Lake City residents that died of COVID during this past year. It was about 146, and there were about 146 candles put around the plaza where the flags are at the city and county building. Remembering those that that are gone. So thank you for that. It was really nice.
Agreed.
Thank you.
Mayor, anything you want to say?
Thanks for running a great meeting, Mr. Chair.
I'm a poor man's James Rogers, so do my best. All right. With that, we are now at the general comment portion of our agenda for comments about general topics and items that were not scheduled for a hearing tonight. I know we have a number of folks who have called in for this, so we are accepting your comments through WebEx, and for those whose only option is to call in, staff will be monitoring a separate phone line. For those who have just joined us, as I shared earlier, City Council has always had rules of decorum that are created to help us conduct an orderly, efficient meeting and moves through the agenda and gives everyone the opportunity to voice their opinions. These rules are no different than when we are meeting in person and are important to create a space where people can feel safe to provide their comments and differences of opinion, even when we are meeting virtually. In order to achieve this, our rules of decorum extend from the moment you arrive into our virtual meeting. To help facilitate our comment period, please be respectful. Avoid yelling or making racial slurs, obscene or defamatory remarks. The council respects all points of view and we welcome new insights. However, using foul language and personal attacks make the public comment forum uncivil and intimidating for others. In addition to this being a public forum, this meeting is also being broadcast on television and the internet. Because of that, the council has decided to more strictly enforce the use of profanity. If you feel you need to use profanity to express your point, you're welcome to email council members or call our comment line at 801-535-76. 5-4. Based on that, this will be considered your advance warning against the use of profanity. If someone uses profanity, we'll mute your microphone and you will forfeit your opportunity to address the council tonight. In addition, just as we would ask for your name in our in-person meetings, please provide a first and last name prior to speaking in the public comment period. And to limit disruption, your first and last name given cannot include a message or violate our rules of decorum. If your registered name doesn't meet this requirement, then our staff will use the chat feature to gather that information from you. If you are unable to give a first and last name that meets this requirement, our staff is happy to direct you to another forum because your message is important to us still. Again, Amber Pearson from our staff is helping moderate the meeting. She will be messaging with the attendees to coordinate. Please monitor the chat screen for information and/or feel free to message our staff with any questions. Again, her name is Amber Pearson. Robert, another staff member, will be calling the names of those who wish to comment and unmuting lines. Once we open public comment, Robert will announce 3 names at a time so that people can have some notice and be prepared to speak. If you do not wish to speak, please message our staff to let them know, or when the host states your name, please just let us know you're here to listen. When it is your turn to speak, the meeting host will unmute your line. Please state your name and the 2-minute timer will begin. At the 2-minute mark, the host will announce time and your microphone will be muted. And I apologize in advance for that. We're trying to be fair for everyone. Of course, if you are unable to complete your full comment within the available time, please feel free to mail us, email us, or you can also call us on the phone and we can get that information to you. Robert, please go ahead and announce, actually before I do that, just one quick clarification. We've had a lot of land use items tonight, and I know oftentimes the public there is some confusion about how that works. Private property owners can petition the city for a rezone of their property. As a council, we don't go actively trying to rezone people's property for them or to change what they want to zone it to. We can make a determination yes or no on their application. And so it's fairly narrow for us here. So just be aware of that as we're talking about land use items in the context of this council meeting. All right, Robert, please go ahead and announce the first 3 individuals who are in the queue to speak.
Thank you, Council Chair. First, we have Cindy Cromer, followed by Arthur Sandak, and then Scott Andrews. Cindy, you're unmuted now.
Hi, everybody. This afternoon, I sent you some comments on your discussion about the RMF 30 proposal. There are a couple of aspects of your consideration worth thanking you for. One is that the staff members present included hand. Economic development is still missing in action, but the group convened today was more diverse than the one which drafted the proposal. Thank you for that. And you have notified the property owners in the RMF 30 zone. I got 2 notifications. The changes constitute a rezoning based on my common sense approach to the meaning of the term. And I'll deal with that and my own inadequacies at a later time. I have 3 takeaways from your discussion. One is that the planning division is so far out in front of everybody else in terms of doing the homework that there is no comparison. Where is economic development? Who is going to deal with the cost basis, depreciation, capital gains, the value of non-conforming density, financing affordable units, those factors which drive the decisions that developers make? Housing is interdisciplinary. Now finally, hand is at the table. Could somebody send an invitation to the people who understand the financing? Secondly, the proposed process for procurement is inconsistent with how quickly the city has been able to respond to the emergencies in the past year. Why can't we deal with housing with the same focus that we've had for natural and man-made disasters? And you could read the rest of it. I have a pot shot at the Cordini administration. And the third thing is, as I was listening to you, the thought just kept recurring to me as how many people will be displaced in the RMF 30 modifications if they occur before the city gets the safety net constructed. Demolitions and displacements will accelerate. We know that. We do not know by how much. Thank you very much for your conversation earlier today.
Thanks, Cindy.
Next, we have Arthur Sandak, followed by Scott Andrews, and then Devin O'Donnell. One moment. Arthur, you're unmuted. Arthur, you're unmuted. All right, we will come back to Arthur. We will move ahead to Scott Andrews, and then we have Devin O'Donnell and Kistna. One moment, please. Scott, you're unmuted.
Hello, thank you. I've been a resident of Salt Lake City, Utah, starting when I was about 17. I actually had to leave home in high school. My dad dropped me off at my uncle's house, and my uncle was supposed to let me finish my senior year of high school. A week after my uncle left, my dad left, my uncle dropped me off at a boarding house and said goodbye. And that's how I started my life here in Salt Lake City as a 17-year-old. I worked nights at Sizzler and lived in a one-room boarding room. And I think my rent at that time was something like $110. I've watched over the years, downtown Salt Lake City was extremely scary. It was full of high density, packed in people in all types of shabby houses. Many owners that I know that invested in properties here that own like 10 or 20 houses paid $5,000 and $10,000 per house downtown. And the university continued to grow, and the Salt Lake City became a mecca for diversity. And we've now reached the inflection point with changes in super trends of technology and everything that we're now very successful. And I subsequently own buildings downtown and Eastside Central. Rents and demand are going through the roof, and costs continue to go up. And I'm reminded of my experience of living in San Francisco more than 15 years ago, where as the other lady who commented about those charming houses, of which each house cost at least $2 million. And I was there during the recession, and the building codes and other things were so onerous on the owners of property there.
Time.
Sorry for the cutoff. Again, we'd love to hear what you have to say. And please talk to staff offline here. We can get your comments to us as soon as possible.
Next, we have Devin O'Donnell, followed by Kistna, and then Darren Mann. Devin, you're unmuted.
Hi, yes. So Devin O'Donnell. I've lived in Salt Lake for about 14 years. So with all the rezones proposed by the City Council and by the RDC, I'm here to express my general concern and frustration of further construction of mixed use and moderate to high density residences in Salt Lake. As a long-term resident, I have steadily seen rental prices rise, both in large buildings and private rentals. This seems to be driven mostly by new apartment buildings and their prices. I did a survey of 60 of the newer apartment buildings in the downtownish area. According to their marketing, the rent rates start at about $1,200 for a studio, with a small 100 at $950, $1,300 to $2,000 for a one bedroom, and $2,300 for a two bedroom. There are some older buildings that also offer lower income housing in these areas. These are entirely unaffordable for many in the city. If we were to follow the generally accepted budget rule of spending 50% of your income on needs that includes housing, food, and transport, that 50% would equal about $500 at minimum wage, $620 at the 40% medium income, and $1020 if you're $15 an hour. Now, if you spent that entirety on housing, which should actually go to food as well, that would put occupancy at between 2 to 3 people in a studio, 3 to 5 people in a one bedroom, and 4 to 6 people in a two bedroom at minimum wage. That averages around 2 to 3 for the rest of them at $15 an hour. So again, that was a survey of 60 total buildings, 10 of which included affordable housing under $550 for a one bedroom. 7 of those 10 are operated by EMG Management, and only 3 of those 10 are located east of 300 West. So with all of this in mind, the city has not held its focus on affordable housing as promised in the growing SLC plan set by the city in 2018. It would appear the city only wants to invite higher incomes and corporate interests to the city while pushing lower income peoples to lower quality homes and to the west side, which honestly is neglected and I could speak to on a later date. You could also consider giving these lands to developments to create property for the unsheltered.
Time.
That is my time. Thank you.
Thanks for your comments.
Next, we have Christina and then Darren Mann, followed by Sarah Lind. Christina, you are unmuted.
Hi, yes, this is Ksenia Knazova. I am the Executive Director of the Nomad Alliance. Again, thank you for your valiant effort at pronouncing my name. I just want to say a huge thank you to the chair who's not here today, Amy and Chris Wharton, for coming out with us on our Nomad supply drives several Sundays in a row and seeing the true tragedy that we see on the streets. I commented before about the rezoning and mentioning how there are so many commercial interests that are being heard, while those who are not landowners, who are not property owners, aren't being heard. And I just want us to investigate whether we are still under the guise of feudalism, where landowners were elevated and those who had no access to land were silenced. And, you know, we can do better. We've got to answer the call for the unsheltered to have a place to rest their head. And that's why we are working with the Village Cooperative and Darren Mann on rezoning, and with you guys to rezone some land so that we can build a tiny house settlement, so that we can finally give them a place where they have just as much say as all of these commercial interests that are always on the agenda. Again, there's an abatement also, several abatements happening today. I want to speak on behalf of the youth camp. There are several people there that everyone there we truly, truly love. We met an 11-year-old there, kids that are LGBTQ and kicked out by their parents, former foster kids. And, you know, these are children that can barely take care of themselves. It's the community that needs to help them, and forcing them to move from the one and only home across from the VOA Resource Center where they can get a meal is just unwarranted and truly, truly cruel. I urge you to please stop these abatements, and also please rezone this land and work with us to care for people that don't have family, that don't have a community like all of us do. We are so very
Time.
privileged.
Thank you for your comments. And again, we can take more offline.
Next, we have Darren Mann, followed by Sarah Lind, and then Carolyn Lyons. Darren, you're unmuted.
Hello, I'm Darren Mann, and I just wanted to speak about the abatements that are currently happening in the Salt Lake City area. So there's specifically one on North Temple. It's very interesting that we're continuing with the abatements now. I know that the Salt Lake City doesn't have utmost say. You know, the county, the health department is talking about, you know, that they're the ones that move the needle forward. But as I really would like the city council to reflect as we move on these city council measures of rezoning all of these different districts that we've talked about on the city council meeting. I've been listening very intently. As we move forward in our developments, I would really urge us to really think, because us at the Village Cooperative partnered with the Nomad Alliance, we've been moving forward with fundraising for a tiny home community. And if we can start to actually move in a way that is ecologically and economically sound to address the homeless crisis, instead of just move forward on developments that are only for the economic development of those that have the privilege to have housing over their heads, then I think we can create and be a flagship for solutions that are positive, and not only to address homelessness, but also to address you know, our air quality. We can really start to tackle more birds with just one stone. So let's let's keep that in mind as we move forward on all of these rezonings that we keep talking about in these councils, and as we keep pushing them to the next council meeting and in the next council meeting. Let's start moving forward with a spirit of action and a spirit of contemplative camaraderie. So thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, Darren.
Thank you.
Next, we have Sarah Lynn, followed by Carolyn Lyons, and then Jen Colby. One moment, please. Sarah, you're unmuted.
Hi, thanks. Thanks for accepting my comments. I would just like to request a stop on the pushes on the encampments, the current abatements obviously going on in the city. Clearly, with the development of Salt Lake City, we're encountering a number of concerns. And with the pandemic and the continued development of our cities, our unsheltered populations have been placed into extremely vulnerable circumstances. We need to make a plan for those that have nowhere to go. Our shelters are near full or reaching over capacity as of today, and they have been so now for months. Please consider zoning an area for them to live sustainably and help facilitate current resources. Please let them stay put where they are at currently until there is a plan considering overhousing in the shelters and our current COVID concerns. Stop the pushes and allow camping within the city limits until this is resolved. I'm in support of the Nomad Alliance and the Unsheltered Utah Cooperative. Their suggestions should be heard and addressed because they are providing real solutions. And that's all. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Sarah.
Next, we have Carolyn Lyons, followed by Jen Colby, and then Ron Tamu. Carolyn, you're unmuted.
Hi, thank you, and I appreciate you all spending so much time listening to our comments. I apologize if you're not the right board to be addressing. I have actually found it particularly confusing and difficult to get involved. So this is one of my first steps. What I wanted to briefly speak on tonight is something that might be somewhat unpopular, but particularly during the pandemic, I've seen an increase in dogs being off leash in public parks. And this is something that, particularly as we speak to continued urban density, growing areas for larger communities, I think the preservation of public spaces, particularly outdoor space for people who don't have their own, is incredibly important. For instance, the northwest corner of Liberty Park, there's a large sunny field there. I know lots of families in the summer and in the nicer months who use that area as a place to recreate outdoors. And I am concerned that we are turning over the limited outdoor space that we have to off-leash dogs. And again, I don't know if this is your area of something to regulate, but I just want to call that to attention. We love our dogs. We love them to be off-leash in the appropriate areas. But I hope that, particularly as we move forward into the warmer months, we can regulate that space a little bit better. So thanks so much.
Thanks, Carolyn. If you want to talk to staff offline, I bet we can get you pointing in the right direction and see.
Council Chair, next we have Jen Colby, followed by Ron Tamu. Jen, you're unmuted.
Yeah, thanks. It's been a long night. Thank you for hearing from me again. I just wanted to clarify a couple of things after working closely with our neighborhood. We recognize very clearly that a National Historic District is different than a local historic district or an individual building registry, and that specifically for the 200 South properties, that yes, the owners potentially could still tear them down. We find the threat of tear downs regardless rather blackmailish, frankly, and if that were the case, well, build back in R2. We're okay with that. We're not okay with it, but we'll deal with it. But I just wanted to speak up and say that we all value preservation and the structure of our neighborhoods. We've had wonderful infill developments that have fit the zoning already, and we can do that again. But again, if the property owners so disregard the value of their own structures after 30 years of neglect and now threaten us with tear down as though somehow that will get them the rezone, I ask you to please see through this. It may be a bluff. It may not be a bluff. We'll deal with it either way. But putting back 5 structures as either single family or duplex, if they were sold, they could have an ADU and we could get to 15 units. It's not ideal, but we all recognize that. But we also value our historic neighborhood, apparently unlike these neighbors. And a historic district is a fabric of structures. We were at 74% contributing structures. Every one we lose threatens the historic district and the tax credits the rest of us get for actually maintaining and investing in our properties, whether rentals or owners. So I just want to make that totally clear, because there may have been some misunderstanding that people think they will be protecting the structures. We are very clear, we understand this, but we also value the structures, and we're very disappointed the owners are willing to cut their noses off to spite their face, apparently, or be the kids who take their toys home because they won't share with their siblings. But that's how it rolls, and we'll deal with it. So wanted to say that as I finally get around to my dinner, and I appreciate your long night, and please do not fall for this. Frankly, it's irrelevant. It doesn't meet the master plan. Thank you.
Thanks, Jen, for your comments.
Council Chair, next we have Ron Tamu. Ron, you're unmuted.
It's Ron Tamu. It's been, this was shocking to hear how many of these community people from our local community, the Glendale community, say how they involved everybody. We have a person that lives on the property 24 hours a day. Nobody came to our door. We have our president that actually has the phones going directly to her. Nobody called, nobody left a message. So all of this community outreach is obvious for communities that are not members of our church. And I know that this is definitely just plain religious prejudice. If we were an LDS ward, we would be involved. They would have got us involved, they would have talked to us long before they even bought our property. But nobody came to our place. If somebody came to our place, we would have known it. If somebody would have done something. We got one little notice on our gate for a public meeting. We showed up early and even waited after we got there and they opened the place up for a half an hour and nobody showed up. We were told by the person that was there from the city that don't worry about it. You will be involved in everything that goes on. Don't worry, they have to get you involved. And yet we hear about this secret meeting that the Glendale Council had. And obviously, if you look at the map, and I don't know if any of you ever bothered to, but if you look at the map, you can see there is only one real property that is being infringed upon, and it's our church, our sanctuary. And we have been there for over 40 years. And I know when Corky first went there, who was our founder, he tried to get involved with the local community, but of course we were building a pyramid, which obviously freaked everybody out, I guess. I don't know. But our religion is just as real and valid as anybody else. And for them to go around and say how wonderful it is to.
Well, thanks, Mr. Tamu. Again, we can take your comments offline as well if you want to do something for the council.
Council Chair, it does not appear we have any more commenters. Thank you.
Okay, I would say let's double check it, but I'll just take a moment while I look to the next motion being on our agenda here. All right, well, I want to thank everyone who made a comment in the general comment portion, and we are now at the new business portion of our agenda. Item E1 is regarding a motion to ratify the determination that the council will continue to meet remotely and without an acre location under HB 5002. I'll look for a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move that we ratify that the council will continue to meet remotely without an anchor location under HB 5002.
A motion from Councilmember Dugan. Do you have a second?
Second.
I have a second from Councilmember Mono. Any discussion of this item? Seeing none. Councilmember Rogers. Can we do a vote?
Yes. Yes.
Councilmember Wharton.
Yes.
Councilmember Valdemoros.
Yes.
Councilmember Mono.
Yes.
And Councilmember Dugan.
Yes.
And I'm a yes as well, so that motion passes unanimously with Councilmember Fowler absent. We have no unfinished business scheduled tonight. And lastly, we are at section G, the consent portion of our agenda. I'll look for a motion.
Mr. Chair, I move we approve the consent agenda.
Second.
We have a motion from Councilmember Rogers, a second from Councilmember Wharton. Any discussion? All right, all those in favor? I guess we'll go individually again. I apologize. Old habits die hard. Councilmember Rogers.
Yes.
Councilmember Wharton.
Yes.
Councilmember Valdemoros.
Yes.
Councilmember Mono.
Yes.
Councilmember Dugan.
Yes.
And I'm a yes as well with it passes unanimously with Councilmember Fowler absent. This concludes our formal city council meeting tonight. The council's formal meeting now stands adjourned. See you all soon. I'm on the schedule, sorry.